The prairie winds carried with them the bitter scent of hunger. Dust lifted from the barren earth and drifted into the weary eyes of a woman clutching a bundle too fragile for the world. Her dress was torn, shoes worn thin to threads, and the only thing keeping her upright was the warmth of the tiny heartbeat against her chest. Her name was Clara. Once she had been the daughter of a preacher in a small town that now lay abandoned, swallowed by drought. Once she had laughed under church bells and danced in meadows with wildflowers braided in her hair. But that was before the sickness had taken her father, before debts had stolen her home, before hunger had carved sharp edges into her cheeks. Now she was nothing but a shadow, wandering from settlement to settlement, begging for work, for scraps, for mercy. Her baby, Samuel, whimpered against her breast. She had not enough milk left to soothe him. For 2 days she had eaten nothing, her body too frail to sustain him. His cries pierced the air like a knife, and every sound was a reminder that she was failing him. She would rather die than watch him fade, yet death circled them both with a patience as wide as the plains. It was hunger that brought her stumbling down the dirt road leading toward a ranch. The house stood strong against the desolation, whitewashed wood, wide porches, and smoke curling from its chimney. The cattle in the distance were lean but alive. She had passed enough ruined farms to know that this rancher had managed to fight back against the land. Whoever lived there was not only surviving, but thriving enough to bake bread. And bread was all she could think of. When she reached the gate, Clara nearly collapsed. Her knees trembled, her lips cracked. She pressed Samuel closer and whispered, "Hold on, my love. Just a little longer." The rancher appeared then. A tall man, broad shoulders under a worn leather coat, his hat-shading eyes that were steady and unreadable. His silence was more intimidating than if he had shouted. He carried no gun in his hands, only a coil of rope, as though he had been working in the fields moments before she intruded. Clara dropped to her knees in the dust. Pride shattered completely. The words tumbled from her mouth like glass splintering. "Please, please, sir. I'll give you the baby. Just give me bread. Take him, raise him, spare him from starving. I don't need anything else, just a crust. Just something to put in my mouth so I don't fall dead before I can even lay him down in your arms." Her voice cracked into sobs. Samuel wailed, the sound sharp and desperate. She pulled the blanket back to show the tiny boy's gaunt face, his lips searching for nourishment. "He doesn't deserve this. He's innocent. Please, please, take him. I can't keep him alive anymore." The rancher stood unmoving. His shadow fell across her as though judgment itself loomed there. He said nothing, not a word, while Clara's tears cut tracks through the dust on her cheeks. Silence. Clara thought her heart would burst from shame. Had she asked for too much? Had she damned herself by offering her child like a coin to be bartered? She bent lower, pressing her forehead to the ground. "I beg you," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Bread, or death, I don't care which. Just don't let him die with me." The rancher finally moved. He crouched down slowly, his gloved hand brushing the blanket around Samuel. Clara gasped, half afraid he would strike her for her blasphemy, half praying he would lift the baby from her arms. But instead, he gently adjusted the cloth to shield the child's face from the wind. Then, without a word, he reached down and pulled Clara herself to her feet. His grip was steady, commanding, but not unkind. Before she could speak, before she could even understand, he scooped Samuel into one arm and guided Clara toward the porch with the other. Still silent, still saying nothing. Inside the house, warmth enveloped her like a miracle. The smell of baking bread nearly knocked her senseless. On the wooden table sat a loaf fresh from the oven, steam curling upward. Clara's knees buckled again. She couldn't take her eyes from it. Her stomach cramped so fiercely she thought she might faint. The rancher set Samuel down in a wooden cradle by the fire, a cradle already there, as though waiting. Then he tore the loaf in half and placed the larger piece in Clara's trembling hands. She devoured it. No shame, no manners, just survival. Tears streamed down her face as she chewed. It was soft, warm, alive in her mouth. Every bite tasted like salvation. And when she finished, when the edge of her hunger dulled and she could breathe again, she looked up at him with wide, wet eyes. "Why?" she whispered. The rancher still did not answer. He stood with arms crossed, studying her as though weighing every fracture of her soul. Then he brought a jug of water, poured it into a tin cup, and set it before her. Only after she drank, only after Samuel quieted in his cradle, did the man finally speak. Name. Clara blinked. Clara, sir. My son. Samuel. He gave a short nod. You'll both stay. The words nearly knocked her breath away more than hunger had. Stay. Here. With him. She opened her mouth to protest, to explain she had nothing to give in return, that she had only meant for him to take Samuel, but the rancher had already turned back to the fire, checking the logs, as if the matter were settled. From that moment, everything changed. Clara tried at first to insist she could leave once she had strength, that he had no obligation. But the rancher, his name was Luke, simply continued his silence. He gave her food, a bed, and let Samuel rest in the cradle. Days stretched into weeks. Clara found herself helping in small ways, sweeping floors, washing dishes, mending clothes. Luke never asked it of her, but he never stopped her either. Slowly, she began to see him differently. His silence was not coldness. It was weight. A man who had lost so much that words had become useless. The walls of his home carried faint traces of another woman's touch, lace curtains faded by sun, a Bible on the shelf, a child's toy hidden beneath the settee. Clara dared not ask, but she felt it. Grief lived here too. Luke worked dawn to dusk, tending cattle, fixing fences, repairing what the harsh land tore apart. And every evening, he returned to the house where Samuel cooed in Clara's lap. Sometimes, Clara would catch Luke watching them with an expression that cracked his stern mask for just a heartbeat, an ache, a yearning, a memory. It was not long before Samuel began to grow stronger. His cheeks rounded, his cries softened. Clara's milk returned with nourishment, and she no longer feared she would bury her child beneath dry earth. Hope returned in small, delicate pieces. One night, when a storm battered the windows and lightning split the sky, Clara rose to quiet Samuel's fussing. She found Luke already there, rocking the cradle with surprising tenderness. His big hands looked almost awkward against the small curve of Samuel's blanket, but his gaze was fierce with protection. Clara whispered into the thunder, "You were never just taking him from me. You were taking me too." Luke glanced at her, his jaw tightening, then looked back to the baby. For a long time, the only sound was rain hammering the roof. Then, in a voice rough with disuse, he finally spoke. "No one should beg to trade their child for bread." Clara's breath caught. "You'll never beg again," Luke added. His voice was quiet, but it carried the strength of an oath. And in that promise, Clara's heart broke and healed all at once. The seasons turned. What had begun as desperate survival became something else, something tender, unspoken, but real. Clara worked beside Luke in the fields, her hands blistered but strong. At night, she sang Samuel to sleep by the fire while Luke carved small wooden toys in silence. The three of them formed a rhythm, a family pieced together not by blood, but by mercy. Clara never forgot the day she fell to her knees in the dust, ready to surrender her own flesh for a crust of bread. She never forgot the silence of the rancher who said nothing, until his actions said everything. He had not only taken the baby, he had taken her too. And in that taking, he had given them both back their lives.